You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 271. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, author of How to Get On Podcasts, the podcast matchmaker, and CEO and founder of the MLG Collective. I'm excited to share the stories and life lessons of changemakers and authors with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac. Have you ever wondered what it's like to work with the 1%? How about as their nanny? My guest today is Stephanie Kiser, author of Wanted Toddler's Assistant, and how she was the nanny to some of the wealthiest individuals in New York. Not only that, but she shares her story of how she grew up, definitely not one of the wealthy in New York, and how she came to write this book, how she discovered her own views and opinions along the way in regards to politics and much more. And we are diving into all of it. It is a fun conversation that I know you're going to enjoy. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, Michelle.
I'm so excited to talk to you, even though we've already been talking 20 minutes already. Now
Yes.
we'll let everyone in to hear us in our conversation.
They don't know what they were missing.
They don't know what they're in for. Can you introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Yes, I am Stephanie Kiser, and I wrote the memoir Wanted, Toddler's Personal Assistant, that came out in August. There it is.
It is so good.
Thanks.
You were the toddler's personal assistant, meaning that you were a nanny to the very wealthy.
Yes. I, at first, when the publisher came up with that title, that was not the title I had, I was really offended. I was like, oh, this is not going to be the title of my life. But the more I've sat with it, it's correct. It's a unique title. It's catchy, and it's true.
So share with us how you got into being a nanny. First of all, you're not anymore, but you're not. You're in a nice office building with a view.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still kind of nannying in a different way, just for adults, but yes.
How did that start that you became a nanny?
I really just was broke. That's all there is to it. I moved to New York. I was really hungry to get a writing job, to be creative, like so many people. And then I got here, had all this student debt, and I was just like, this isn't going to work. I was making like $400 a week at a PR firm, and I couldn't pay rent and the loans and all the other things that turns out comes with being alive. So I was looking for something else. My best friend suggested, oh, just, you babysat in college. Why not check it out? And in my mind, I had made, $12, $15 a night babysitting an hour. So that didn't seem helpful to me. But I quickly found out that nannying for, super wealthy people on the Upper East Side or Tribeca or, these really ritzy areas, it lets you kind of skip that entry level salary. And I just got really lucky, and I fell in right away with a family on Fifth Ave that was wonderful and I really liked. And yeah, then I got kind of sucked into it because then the money was so good that I was like, how do I leave? But I've been out of it for about 4 years now.
And what do you do now?
I just started a role 4 months ago as chief of staff at an ad tech company, which was the dream. And if you're reading the book, I'm talking about I want to be in this fancy office building. And now sometimes I'll be in the big conference room in a meeting and I'll just be like, is this what I waited for? This right here? So, it's good and it's bad. There's definitely parts of nannying that I miss, but obviously I'm really happy that I was able to get to this point that I'm at now.
You share in the book the various families that you either met or you worked for, and there were some that were like you and I, totally. Yeah. I don't want to use the word normal because that's not kind, but like down to earth, regular people versus the ones who like don't reprimand a child. It seemed very Montessori, let them
I've actually
roll
got
with
some
the
friends
wind.
that are trying that philosophy though, and I'm like, oof. Sometimes I'm hanging out with them. I'm like, what are we doing here? This is not gonna work out.
Yeah. And that's got to be hard, especially as a nanny. Like, that's not really, you don't get, it's not your call. How do you raise
No.
these children or reprimand them? You're told.
Yeah. And I think that's the main reason, there's only one family that I was with that it didn't work out with. And I think that was the main reason is that they just had a very different philosophy on raising children and interacting with them and communicating with them and letting them just, explore and be kids. And I think that being a nanny is so intimate and you are with the children most of their waking hours. So you have to be able to have some influence and you have to be able to, understand the parents' philosophy and, be sort of on the same page, I think, in order for it to work.
Well, when we talk about the one family, I want everyone to realize that there was a child who would like welcome you and call you names and like it wasn't that they were throwing a toy. It was
Mhm.
that they were like verbally abusing you, I felt. And I'm like, what human being thinks that that's okay because the child is expressing themselves? No adult would be doing that.
Yes.
So no, it's not okay for the child either. So that's the kind of behavior that
Yeah,
no.
he actually exclusively called me Fat Stephanie. That was all he responded. That's all he would use. And I agree. I don't think that that's an okay way for anyone to talk to a person. And it was just very odd to me that sort of this concept of, oh, but they need to be them. And I'm like, by being mean to someone else. But that really is the philosophy behind that gentle parenting in a way, because like I said, now I've got friends and I'm seeing, not to that degree, but I'm seeing similar things. And I'm like, is no one going to be like, you have to be a decent human to these tiny people? And they're not.
It's really scary for what the future will hold for these
Mm-hmm.
individuals because when they meet my little individuals, they will be told that that is not nice.
And it, as it should be.
Yeah. It's just, it's interesting. I'm not sure where, well, like we were discussing before, we live in a very strange world right now.
Yes, and not everyone's aligned. We've got a lot of misalignment about what it means to be a good person.
Hmm.
So let's start there, because
Preach.
right now seems like you got to be a bad person if you want to be in charge.
Hmm.
So, I don't know. And what happens when, half of the kids are raised with gentle parenting and half are, that's going to be an interesting dynamic in schools and camps and social settings, I think.
If schools still exist.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true. That could be not even a problem for us. So let's not worry.
let's talk about your childhood, your background, and how that was so vastly different to what you were experiencing work wise.
Yeah, it was. I think that, a lot of people that I'm related to have sort of, they've missed the point that I've tried to make a little bit, which is disappointing, but I can see how it, if it's so close, it's hitting so close to home for them. And I'm holding up a mirror to a lot of people, and I get to do that on my time in my space of processing. So I get that part, but I think that they've seen it very personal as I'm trying to say that, I'm ashamed of where I come from, or I wish I was born rich, but that's really not at all what I wanted to say. I'm just trying to state that we have an inequality problem in America. And I think a lot of the traits I have come from my background, being sort of like agile and scrappy. All of those things are because I didn't have a lot of resources, because my parents were young and I came from a line of mechanics and not people that had a ton of education. So I'm not ashamed at all from coming there, but I do think that, you know, the same kid there today at those schools or in that situation should have the same opportunities as the ones that I was nannying on the Upper East Side who go to Dalton. And they're not getting those opportunities, and they don't have the resources. And I worry that we're missing out on a lot of potentially really successful doctors or really successful scientists or amazing lawyers or all these. There's so many jobs you can have, but we're missing out on people because they're not able to have these opportunities just because they weren't born into privilege.
And then on top of that, if they are given such an opportunity, because you were with basketball
Mm-hmm.
and then, getting into college, but then you walked away with these loans that were absolutely ridiculous. I mean, your
They were
loan
made
amount,
ridiculous.
it was over $1,000 a month to pay back. Like,
Oh,
how
and
do
I'm
you do
still
that?
paying them back. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just where I have sort of just accepted that that's probably just for a long time. Um, sorry, but I didn't actually hear your question. Sorry, that's very jarring for me when I'm reminded of the
I'm
the payment.
sorry. I'm like, and let me remind you, it's today's the
I know
10th.
that
No.
in 6 days.
No, but I was saying, like, it's not just the opportunities, but then even if you are given such an opportunity, you might be smacked with these loan then repayments so that your future opportunities are affected as well. Because now what do? You have a degree, but you went
Mhm.
to go nanny, to be with the wealthy so that you could then repay them. But that wasn't your chosen career path. It wasn't what you intended to do for years, on
Yeah.
end.
Hmm.
There's just no balance, even if we do help.
Yeah, there's not. I mean, the reality is, in order to do all the things that I did, I had to derail my life for nearly a decade. So there was a price to pay. And I think a lot of people, they hear about student loan reform or student loan forgiveness. And what they don't understand is that I don't think anyone's asking for you to just pay off all their debt. I think the issue is that, for me, I'm going to pay back more than twice of what I took out in interest. So it's not actually about it's not about the government saying, hey, you know what, we have to help educate our people. It's about putting modern day poor tax on people who college isn't meant for, really. So no one wants a free everything. No one's saying, please just cancel it all out. But I don't think that you should put people in a position where even when they've done everything right to jump classes, they've done all the work, they're still not going to jump classes.
Mhm.
And for me, it's worked out, I think, best that it possibly could. When I think of other people in this situation, I feel so lucky because yeah, I had to take a long path. I obviously took steps that I didn't intend to, but I learned a lot from them. And now I'm 33 and I'm here in, an ad tech firm in Hudson Yards in this beautiful building, making really good money. And it's still hard. It's still really hard to afford everything I have to afford with these loans hanging over my head. And like I said, it's good for me. Like it's worked out. I have surpassed everyone in my family's earnings at 33, which is amazing, but I also have more debt accumulated at 33 than they had in their entire lives. So it's I think it's a rigged system, and I think there's still a lot of work to be done. And I worry about the people who, thought they were doing the right thing by being first in their family to go to college. It's a huge deal. They did well, they did all these things, but then they came out and they just don't have a career that's that lucrative, but they do have they're sort of in a really impossible spot for essentially the rest of their lives.
Mhm. Let's also talk about, I love the story of how you got Hillary's book.
Oh, I
I
love
was
Hillary.
you were like, "No, I'm not gonna read it. I'm not gonna read it. I don't even know who Hillary Clinton is." And then you read it and you couldn't put it down, and she, like, literally changed your life, I feel.
So she does. I actually last night, this is so humiliating. I have a t-shirt that I bought when she ran in 2016,
Mhm.
and this t-shirt is so ratty. It's got like 15 holes in it, like the armpits falling out. It's just disgusting, but it's like my security t-shirt. Like anytime I just need to chill, I'm like, oh, let me put my Hillary. And my friends keep being like, throw that out. And I'm like, I'll never.
No.
I will never. But yes, no, that did change. It really did change my life. And really the only, we are sort of what we hear for a lot of years, right? When you're growing up, especially for me, the only, my family wasn't even that political. They definitely got more political in a way that I'm not in agreement with over the years. But initially, I knew that everyone was Republican, but it wasn't so in your face as it is now. But all I knew about Hillary was what I heard, which is she's a lesbian. That's the only line that I ever heard. So when
She's
someone
not
comes,
everybody. She wears pantsuits, but she's not.
which are very stylish, I don't care what anyone says, but when it was time for me to read this book, that was all that was in my head, is this one line playing over and over. And I'm so glad that I read it, because I realized I actually had no idea how anything in the world worked. And if I hadn't, I would definitely be voting for things that didn't help me or make my life better. And it was through this book that like take her out of it, that I was able to sort of understand, okay, well, this program or this process is very helpful for me in my life in the stage that I'm in. And here's why we do X, Y, Z and why it makes sense. And so for me, it was really a learning tool that I've carried with me and I continue to use as I learn about the world. But like I said, when someone first handed me that book, I was like disgusted. I was revolted because of this one thing that I'd heard over and over, which I think is something people are kind of suffering from a lot now too, is that they're growing up, especially now people are so passionate about politics one way or the other. So at least for me, I didn't form my own ideas or opinions until I read this book. So it's very special to me, as are the pantsuits. I think that, they will go down in history. I don't care what anyone says.
I love it. I love her. Shout out to Hillary. We'll tag
Yes,
her
we love
when
you.
this goes live. Yes.
Listen to our
Feel
podcast.
free to contact either or both of
Drop us a
us. Both of
line.
us would be
We'll
great.
try to respond.
She's on my post-it of I have a post-it of like goals for life, and she
Let's
is on it.
talk to
So
Hillary
yeah,
for her to
meet
be president.
Hillary.
Which
Yes.
one?
I
Oh,
actually, we did. We actually, she doesn't know this, but
okay.
in 2011, I went to
Mhm.
Hawaii for the first time.
Okay.
I was in corporate aviation. So
Mhm.
APAC was over there, the Asian Pacific Summit.
Okay. Mhm.
Obama was there, and
Mhm.
I was staying at the Hilton Waikiki Village, and
Okay.
she was
That
too.
was nice. Oh,
And I was there for 11 days. So I made friends with all of the staff because that is
uh-huh.
what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And I went to go get my car, and my husband he wasn't my husband yet. We were
Mhm.
dating. He
Yeah.
came, he'd flown out, and the guy says, and my maiden name's Layler, he's, Ms. Layler, you don't want your car yet. You want it in 5 minutes, and you want to go right over there. And I went, oh, okay.
Oh.
And my husband's like, what is going on here? What? And I go, somebody's coming. Somebody's coming. And out walks Hillary, and she goes, aloha, everybody.
Oh
I
my
was like,
God.
ah.
A
I
friend
saw
of
her
mine.
walk by during a happy hour too. And I was like, yes, there she is. So I've spotted her. She has said aloha to me.
I was gonna say, and you got a special word. It wasn't hi. It wasn't. It was
It's
aloha.
on video on one of these old digital cameras that is
Mhm.
somewhere hidden
Oh,
in
you
the
better find
house.
it and keep
I
it close.
know. Yes. Yes. So I
But
have
that
been that
is a
close.
perfect segue into why you should be nice to the staff.
Yes, always, always. I have,
Yes.
because I came from the staff part. I worked in corporate
Mm-hmm.
aviation. I had shared this with you, and
Yep.
you get to meet celebrities, and there are some that they will stick with you when you're like,
Yeah.
wow, you are just a jerk.
They will stick
Period.
in good or bad ways, but it's one or the other.
Yes. Yes, there's some that I sing Rob Lowe's praises. He was the funniest,
Really
nicest. Yes. Sean Penn
interesting.
is very reserved, very kind.
Oh, I could see that. I guess a little
Yeah.
reserved.
And then there were two that I was like, wow, you're just rude. I mean, I could name drop them, Ashanti and Dennis Miller. Not my favorites.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep. Not my favorites. And here I carry this with me 20 years later.
But you know what? It's not even like, I don't know. Ashanti surprises me because it's not even like not that she's not famous. Of course she is, but not in the way of like, I don't know, like Angelina Jolie or Taylor Swift. Like not a name that's like so big that I would be like, checks
Yeah.
out.
No,
Hmm.
20 years ago, she was in her own world. She was performing at Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch. And she was in a hurry and didn't like that it was taking too long to unload all of her bags that she
Yeah,
had
well, that's
packed.
happened sometimes. Oh, the
It's a
hard
different
part.
world, but always be nice to the staff, everybody, because then we're nice
Yes.
back. And
And also, like, people do, they do share it as we're doing right now. You know, it's not that big of a secret as you
yeah,
think.
yeah. And it's funny how it does stick with you for so many years.
Yes, it really
It just,
does.
it stands out. Yeah.
Well, while we're talking about this, there's something that I like to bring up now because so something happened to me when I first started promoting this book. It was my first time talking to press, and it took me a couple of times to realize they're not all my friends. They're trying to write a story. And so I went into my first interview and was like, da, 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 da. And everyone asked me the same question in like the first 5 interviews I did, which was, tell me about the celebrities in that you met on the Upper East Side. And I mentioned, and you've read the book, I think it's one line I mention Robert De Niro, and
Oh, yeah,
every
yeah.
person wrote half an article on him. And I'm like, oh no, this poor man, if he sees this, he's going to be like, who the heck is that girl? And why is she? But I'm not. All I said in one thing was that he was a little grumpy. And look, he's like 80 years old. Of course, he's a little grumpy. You know, he's 80 years old. They're preschool pickup. I understand.
I'd be grumpy too if I was 80 starting
Right?
over again.
I'm grumpy there at 25. So I feel him, but people really ran with this story. So I just want to make it clear here. He was not a bad guy. All I said was he was a little grumpy and he didn't, like being at school pickup, which I mean, I'm sure you pick up your kids. Oh, sorry. You pick up your kids sometimes and you're not excited to be there that day.
No, I really am. I'm not. I look at the drivers and I openly tell them that they're horrible drivers. What are you doing? That's a red curb. That's illegal. You're running a child over. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
never happy. And I don't have the money to have a nanny to go pick them up. So I imagine Robert De Niro would not have been pleased either.
And well, I will say we should be thinking about that, right? Like we're doing all this nasty coverage, but he was there to do pickup and he did have a nanny and he's still, I mean, of course his driver took him and opened the door and all that stuff, but he still went. And I think that's more than a lot of dads.
Oh yeah. 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 Definitely. My
So I
husband's with
hope he
me at
hears
pickup
this
every
and he
day. So
knows
no, I'm
that.
totally with you on that one. There's rarely I've
Right?
had one dad go, "Do you know where my child's classroom is?" I'm like,
Oh my
"Wow,
God.
you should come to school more often, buddy."
Yeah. And you should be
Yes.
embarrassed to ask that. Yeah.
And if I lived in New York and I could afford a driver, like, why wouldn't you? New York is crazy.
100%. 100%. And I will say that the two dads that I saw at pickup most of the time were Robert De Niro and Steve Martin. Those were the two. Now, of course, they got different schedules, they've got different lives, but I'm just saying that they're the ones that knew where the kids' class was. So
They were
we should keep
present.
that in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Shout out to them too. So, Only
Yeah.
Murders in the Building, if you need some podcast help,
Yes, we
I'm here
are.
for that too.
We're offering a lot of services.
We truly are. Yeah. Anybody who just wants to meet, we're good with that too. What made you write the book? You said you were always wanting to be a writer.
Mhm.
At what point were you like, you know what, let me write about my experience and turn it into a memoir and make this my first book?
It was just the story I had. So I had been writing a little bit after college, some screenplays that, I wasn't really doing anything with. And then I was a period where I wasn't writing at all because I was very discouraged. And then I had joined this writers group and I had joined it really for the social aspect because nannying is really isolated and you spend a lot of time with people who can't talk to you. And when they do, it's worse. So I just needed some people my own age. At the time I had 3 kids under 5, one was a newborn, 12 hours a day. So I just felt really, I mean, like a new mom. I was like, oh my God, I'm losing myself. So I joined this group and you had to bring something when it was your turn to go. So I had written this just sort of a snapshot essay, day in the life of being a nanny. And someone in my writing group the next week brought me a copy of Made. And she said, I think you've got something similar here. And I read Maid and I was like, no, I don't think this is what I'm trying to say. And then I thought about it and I was like, maybe. But when I first started submitting it to agents, I was getting the same feedback, which was that there's not really a place in the market for it. Everyone was saying the same thing, to write a memoir right now. They were saying you need to have a TikTok or you need to be a celebrity. You've got to have something. And I had like 300 followers on Instagram. So I didn't have any of that. And then when I finally did find my agent, who's incredible and wonderful, she was clear that we had to find a way to make this engaging and give people a way in. And the way we found that was me paralleling my personal life with the children I was nannying for. So I would say if I had my own choice, I probably wouldn't have written so much about my personal life. I would have stuck to the more in present. And a lot of reviews have said they wish that I left my personal life out. I'm like, guys, me too. Like, I'm with you. But that was the part that made it marketable. So that's how that ended up there. But initially, it really was just sort of, you know, here's what I'm seeing as a nanny who didn't come from this world. And then in the end, we made it a side by side comparison.
I enjoyed that you shared your personal experience. I appreciated it because
Oh,
it
thank you.
did give that unique perspective of you didn't simply come up, from that you knew these contacts and you just made it.
Hmm.
It made it it was real. Obviously it's real, but it made it
Yeah.
much more realistic of, oh, okay, this is where you came from. This is how
Hmm.
you I don't want to say rose up in the ranks, but you connected with these wealthy people, worked for
Yeah.
them, lived with them. You were embedded in this whole community that you
Hmm.
did not grow up in anywhere near,
Yeah.
and then to also follow along with your own self
Hmm.
discovery of what are my opinions politically,
Yeah.
what is it that how do I want to raise my kids, all of these decisions that you made along the way. I thought it was
Hmm.
great that we got to see
Thank
where
you.
you came from and what that journey looked like to where you are today.
I appreciate that. One thing that I have found interesting is that sometimes people will say to me, or they'll message me, or I'll see a review where they feel like I was kind of looking down upon who I used to be when I was around the wealthy people. And that's actually not, I think what maybe is lost a little bit on some people is that when I'm writing a lot of these chapters, I'm 21, I'm 22, I'm 23. This is a time period where people are just kind of angry at the world or they're trying to figure out who they are. And I think that's really what's coming across is just sort of this feeling of what world do I belong in? Who am I? What makes sense to me? What do I believe in? And it took me a really long time because I felt like I was sort of trapped between both worlds. Like I wasn't really who I started as, but I also wasn't one of them. And also, I was working with people who were way more disadvantaged than I was. So it was this strange thing where I was the lucky one, but I wasn't really lucky, but I definitely had it better than most. And I think the the grumpiness or the frustration you're reading is really me trying to understand where do I fit into all of this, which is something honestly I think might be lifelong. I'm still wondering that now in a different way, but still here. I'm like, does this make sense? Do I
Hmm.
belong here in this office? Like, am I fooling everyone? So I think that's sort of, just a lifelong journey, but I never felt like, and I definitely actually don't feel that being wealthy is the best thing in the world. I feel like it's the last takeaway I've made from coming out of the nannying world.
I think it's a lifelong journey. I'm 10 years ahead of you, and I'm still going, okay, where am I supposed to be? What am I meant to
Right.
be doing? Am I doing the right thing? And when you talk about, being where you are and not quite fitting in, it
Mhm.
was, I don't know if it was eye opening. It was definitely, I loved reading the empathy that you built up in connecting with the other nannies and then
Mhm.
them pointing out, hey, do you know why this mom always talks to you? Don't you notice that she doesn't talk to any of us?
Mhm.
And it was because you were the only white nanny
Yeah.
that was there, the only English speaking fluent white
Mhm.
nanny in the room. And it became obvious to everybody else that that's why she was talking to you. And you hadn't recognized, you thought she was just being kind.
Yeah, but
And
if she wants to talk to me about Soul Cycle, that's awesome.
yeah. So I mean that, and that built your empathy up, which I think is, it was another great thing to watch too. I mean, we're watching you really
Mhm.
flourish and grow into the woman that you are today through these experiences that,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have otherwise had
Yeah.
if you hadn't done this.
Yeah, and that's why I always say that yes, this was not the road I intended to take. If I could go back in time and wave a magic wand and someone says you don't have to do any of that. You can just go do whatever career you wanted. Of course. Yeah, that's great. But I do think I learned a lot of stuff that I would not have had I not done this, and I do think it's made me a more curious person, a more empathetic person, someone who cares about other people in a way that I not that I didn't, but I couldn't before, and that has made some of these conversations around, politics with people I love very challenging because, when they're talking about things like deporting immigrants, these are actually people I worked alongside and are really amazing people who are not stealing from the country at all and who are here not even necessarily always because they want to be here, but because they had to. So I feel like, the nannying experience, though not one that I wanted, has really helped define and shape me. And it's not an experience I would want to give back. I mean, would I have shortened it? Probably. I mean, it really went on for too long. But otherwise, I'm happy with it.
I love that. I love the way you summarize that so beautifully, because the book is really, that's what it's about. As the reader, we get to live that experience through you. And there were eye-opening moments for me, like when you talked politics with your family, and I went, oh, this is how. Oh, okay, this is a great experience to read about and to learn how you had these conversations and
Well, they're not
how.
working, so don't take them literally.
But you had the courage to have them still,
Yeah.
and to plant that seed, whatever may hopefully grow, hopefully it takes root, you know that you're
Yeah.
doing these things, and to see though that you yourself were given
Mhm.
this book, and
Yeah.
that's where it all started from. And
Mhm.
what would happen if we properly educated everybody about things, not this is it, it's this way or that way, but
Mhm.
truly, this is what government is, and this
Yeah,
is
and
what
then let
these
them
specific. Yeah,
decide.
yeah.
I
And
think
not preach, right or
no,
left, like these are the facts, and actually present
yeah.
facts.
I think that's absolutely the issue is that we need to educate in a way that isn't predefined with what someone should believe in. It's just here's how it works. Read this and gather your own thoughts, but I don't think I mean I think back to high school and I got a scholarship to a really prestigious school and I had I wouldn't say that I was taking advantage of the education at the time in the way that I should have, but I was being taught by really really brilliant teachers with an amazing curriculum and I don't remember ever learning in the way that I picked up from Hillary's book, oh, this is how this works. Now, granted, some of that may have been that I just wasn't paying attention, but I do think that there is gaps in what we're teaching, why we're teaching, and what we like. Do we really, I think we have to ask ourselves as a country and a society, do we really want people to be able to jump classes? Because I don't think even the people at the bottom want that for some reason. And I feel like I come to this conclusion often because whenever I'm talking to someone that I'm related to about student debt or, about, who gets into Harvard, who gets into Yale, the answer is always if they parents can't pay, they should become plumbers or they should become this. And there's no loyalty to their own crowd of being like, no, like I want my son's best friend to get this opportunity because he's really smart. Or I want, this person or that person. There's not any of that. And I don't understand why.
Hmm. I wish I had the answer.
I know, I'm asking, I'm
I
just
know.
kidding.
I'm like, nope, stumped. I'm going to have to contemplate that as well.
Yes. That's just something I've been thinking about as, we head into January, sort of why are people feeling this way, and how can we talk to them differently, and how do we help kids who are not, in positions of privilege, to dream big and to feel like they can do this, and to not just say, okay, well, this isn't for me, so I guess I can't or I won't. How do we create a system where people are inspired to do more and try and want to?
Hopefully they just read your book.
I hope, but
It's a good start for sure. And then they
it's
can
not
pick up
easy.
Hillary's book and they'll be on their merry way.
Exactly. I'm going to start sending it out in twos.
I like that. Oh, yes.
So if you're listening to this and you want me in Hillary's book, just send me a DM.
I love it. I love it. Are you going to do another book?
Yes, I'm working on a second one right now. That is picking up a little bit where book 2 left off. I had sort of condensed the last chapter about the new role that I take, because I thought that it wasn't, it really wasn't relevant to the story that I wrote. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
it's a new part of my life, but I didn't want it to take away from my nannying journey. But I feel that may have a stronger message on inequality, if that's possible. So I've started working on that one, and hopefully we'll be able to finish up that manuscript in the next few months.
Awesome. I can't wait. You'll come
Thank you.
back and I will read it cover to cover and we'll have
Thank you.
another in-depth conversation that will help hopefully everybody who's listening and more.
Yes, this one I feel, might be a bit more pointed, just because of the nature of the world and what we're
Mm-hmm.
going into. But I think it may, in my opinion, I don't know if my agent listens to this, she might have a different opinion. In my personal opinion, I think that, we might need to get a bit more pointed about
Yeah.
inequality issues.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
You're a delight. I like you.
Thank you.
Where can everybody find you and pick up your book?
I think you can find the book pretty much anywhere. I mean, it's at Barnes and Nobles, it's on Amazon, it's on Target. I don't, I think on the local bookstores, it seems to depend. Sometimes I go and they have it, sometimes they don't. And they can find me on Instagram. I'm at Stephanie Kiser. That is
You
what you
are
meant,
amazing.
right? Where to
Yep,
find it.
that's exactly it. Yes. Thank you so much, Stephanie. It was so
Thank
good to
you.
talk to you.
So fun.
Friends, go grab yourself a copy of Wanted, Toddler's Personal Assistant by Stephanie Kiser, and maybe pick up Hillary Clinton's book while you're at it. I loved getting to talk to Stephanie, hearing what her opinions and thoughts are on the state of our world right now and on how we can help educate one another, our future generations, and how her experience really played a role in all of this for her. I think that we all need to take some time to educate ourselves, to listen, to do the work, because that's the only way that things are going to get better, that we are all going to rise up and really benefit in the future, and to see what the future may hold for each of us. So go grab a copy. I promise you, you will be entertained and educated all at the same time.